Vivian Farrow is like every other girly girl. She loves ballet, she loves pink, she loves dresses. She has a demon in her. Wait. Hi, my name is Rachel, and today we're talking about bubblegum horror, the monsters within us, and specifically we're going to do that by discussing one of my favorite books of 2024, which is I Am Made of Death by Kelly Andrew. The world of horror is a vast place. We're stretching from deep psychological terror to visceral fear of the supernatural, got everything from cannibals to cosmic horror. And one single part of this vast genre is a subgenre that contrasts so starkly with the rest of horror, which is traditionally gritty and dark. I'm talking about bubblegum horror, this unique blend of this sugary aesthetic with everything unsettling and sometimes grotesque. In I Am Made of Death, our main character is Vivian Farrow, and she is the bubblegum aesthetic. She would love my sweater. Actually, no, we need to get rid of all the other colors and just leave the pink. If Vivian had a website, it would all just be soft pink with bows and ballerina shoes, but also a tab that says under construction, do not click, which if clicked on would lead you to a computer virus. I actually have my own website with a cute aesthetic, and today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, can help you make your own website too. Squarespace is an all-in-one website building platform that makes it incredibly easy to have a well put together, professional looking, and visually beautiful website of your own for you to engage with your audience, talk about yourself, and even sell anything, whether that's your time or your content or an actual product that you create. Whatever you want to showcase, Squarespace makes it easy. I had been wanting to build a website for myself. I wanted to have a place where people could find me, see what corners of the internet I haunt, make it easy for my catalog of content to all be there, talk about my book club. Squarespace made this so easy for me to make readswithrachel.com. I have general info on here, my recent videos, frequently asked questions, a contact form. It was so easy to put this together and it looks so cute. If you don't know where to start, neither did I, that's fine, because Squarespace offers templates for you that you just customize according to your preferences. If you're a reviewer and you want to have a place that's sort of a hub for people to find you, or maybe you're an author looking to market your book, Squarespace makes it so easy for you to do both of those things. Squarespace has e-commerce tools, and they even have a custom merch service that you can utilize without having to worry about production, inventory, shipping, whatever your online presence or maybe even your business includes. You can use Squarespace to help you organize it and market it with a beautiful website of your own. For a free trial, go to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch your website, you can use the QR code on the screen or go to squarespace.com/readswithrachel for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/readswithrachel. The link is down below in my description, and thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Okay, this video is going to be in a couple of parts. So first, I'm going to talk about what bubblegum horror is, the aesthetic used in this book called I Am Made of Death, and then I'm going to talk about the theme that is predominant in I Am Made of Death and where else you might have seen a similar thing before. And then we will get into some specifics about the book, but I am going to try to remain as spoiler-free as possible. First, let me give you the synopsis. Following the death of his father, Thomas Walsh had to grow up quickly, taking on odd jobs to keep food on the table and help pay his gravely ill mother's medical bills. When he's offered a highly paid position as an interpreter for an heiress who exclusively signs, Thomas, the hearing child of a deaf adult, jumps at the opportunity, but the job is not without its challenges. Thomas is expected to accompany Vivian wherever she goes, but from the start, she seems determined to shake him. To make matters worse, her parents keep her on an extremely short leash. She is not allowed to go anywhere without express permission. She is not to deviate from her routine. She is most importantly not allowed to be out after dark. A selective mute, Vivian Farrow hasn't said a word in years, not since going missing in Red Rock Canyon when she was 4 years old. No one knows quite what happened to her out in the dark. They only know the sound of her voice is now as deadly as a poison. Anyone who hears her speak suffers a horrible death. Ever since that fatal family vacation, Vivian has been desperately searching for a ray. I can't talk today. Every word I say is wrong. For a way to regain control both of her voice and her body, because the face staring out of the mirror isn't hers. It's something with teeth. Thankfully, Vivian has a plan. She's found someone who claims to be able to perform a surgical exorcism. She just needs to find a way to get rid of Thomas first, but Thomas can't afford to walk away, nor is he willing to abandon the mysterious girl he's quickly falling for, no matter what dark powers threaten to swallow them both whole. I don't know why I laughed like that. So bubblegum horror is a subgenre that stands in contrast with the more intense and serious forms of horror. We have candy-colored visuals, upbeat soundtracks kind of thing, and it's typically centering adolescence, particularly like adolescence experienced by girls. So the story typically features a teenage protagonist who navigate through dark and twisted events. There's often a supernatural or a monstrous force, and the theme of being monstrous is often involved here, and that's definitely the case for the example I'm going to give later, and then that's the whole theme of I Am Made of Death. Wow, I'm using a lot of words today, and I feel like none of them are making any sense. I keep telling you I script my videos, but then why am I so bad at this? So bubblegum horror is an aesthetic. Like, first impression is the aesthetic of it. We're dealing with a lot of stories with like teenage identity. I think that bubblegum horror is actually a really good way to describe this character in particular from Stranger Things, at least in the first season. I can't remember her name. But it could also be said that The Craft is sort of bubblegum horror. And Jennifer's Body from 2009, I would say, is bubblegum horror. Now, there's going to be like some overlap with other subgenres and stuff, but to me, Jennifer's Body is bubblegum horror. We have like these exaggerated, bright contrasts up against horror elements, which are dark and gross and disturbing and disgusting and gritty. And both of these are sort of screaming at you at once, which makes for this like very particular effect. So a lot of these are going to be stories of teenage identity and empowerment, particularly empowerment of girls. There's going to be the theme of coming of age, coming to terms with yourself and the monstrous parts of you, and self-agency. So like in Jennifer's Body, the protagonist, Jennifer, goes from being a popular girl into a monstrous, bloodthirsty thing in a girl's body. So she is both the like sugary sweet aesthetic and also the something rotten underneath, which is like quintessential bubblegum horror. Like if you candied an apple but the apple was already rotten, that is bubblegum horror. And that is an example of a piece of media that is using that aesthetic along with horror elements to also discuss empowerment and friendship amongst girls, and also killing boys and the monster within. Then we have The Craft, a group of girls who form a coven, and we have this juxtaposition of this sugary sweet bubblegum aesthetic with dark magic that comes along with this story of rebellion and adolescence. And again, that juxtaposition between this aesthetic and this aesthetic where you have this bubblegum versus monster, dark, gross. And I think what this subgenre is trying to do is critique society's expectations of being an adolescent, being a youth, one of the youths, as Schmidt from New Girl would say, youths. It's a really great subgenre, in particularly to show the layers of being a human. People are more than just their exterior, when beneath this sweetness, this perceived sweetness, is this underlying rot, this destructive thing. What's more like quintessential being a youth than rebelliousness and pushing boundaries and subverting authority and societal expectations? So while traditional horror typically has these feelings of dread, slow creeping tension, characters are often very hopeless, in bubblegum horror, it is not a genre that does the trope that we find so often in horror, which is the final girl trope. It sort of blurs the lines really between villain and victim in a really interesting way. Certainly our main character in I Am Made of Death is like a great example of blurring that line between victim and villain. I think Heathers also might be considered like almost a bubblegum horror type thing. There's a lot of nihilism, but there's also going to be a lot of, there's so many different shades to this. So there's also going to be a lot of like humor and sometimes satire. There's something like really playful about bubblegum horror, which again is like juxtaposing against this dark, gross, unsettling genre. I wouldn't call Scream bubblegum horror, but I would say that Scream does a similar thing where it's like this very dark movie, but it's doing like obvious satire. It's doing parody, but you're still feeling the danger. It's not like, what's the movies with Anna Faris where it's like making fun of a bunch of horror films and you don't feel like you're in danger at any point because everything's a joke? With this, there's more of a balance where you still feel like you're in danger, but also there's a lot of funny going on. It's a very delicate balance. Again, there's layers here. There's layers and there's contrast, and that's what makes this like so delicious. You have this innocence versus danger, this sweet versus sinister, and this is what like is subverting this sort of like expectations of the genre, because it lives at this like intersection of things that you thought were not able to cross over. But the thing that I really love about this and what I Am Made of Death really like highlighted is sort of like a facade, in this case beauty, hiding a monster within. and that gets us to evaluate how we all sort of put on a facade, and it is so deeply human to feel like we all have a monster within us. So in Jennifer's body, I'll get to I Am Made of Death in a minute, but in Jennifer's body, there's this obvious juxtaposition that Megan Fox really pulled off really well. Jennifer is beautiful. She is stunning, but underneath this like external almost perfection is this darkness. And when the protagonist is this, you know, beautiful woman with this monster within, it's sort of trying to mirror the ways in which society fears women and girls who step outside of these like prescribed boundaries of femininity. There's a lot of media where women, our inner monster, is linked to defiance of traditional feminine gender norms. What I love about this, going back to like the whole idea of both a victim and a villain, is exploring how you're not purely good and you're not purely evil. We all exist in this very murky state of being human where we're not really one extreme or another, and yet we all still grapple with, okay, well, can anyone, you know, see like who I am on the inside? Am I so monstrous that I am so other? There's also a lot of in Jennifer's body, like there's a lot of discussion of like objectification of women. Now in Vivian Farrow's case, in I Am Made of Death, it's not so much objectification in the way that Jennifer is objectified, like very sexually. It's that Vivian is protected as if she is an asset rather than a person, because her monstrosity, the inner monster, can be used as a weapon. Bubblegum horror has a common theme where we very like insightfully explore this juxtaposition, this relationship between beauty and monstrosity, particularly in adolescence in girls. And the inner monster that we see in media is reflective of the inner monster that we all feel like we have, and that society often tells us we have if we step outside of these like boxes that we are told, you know, that we are prescribed essentially. You can also do this like in a similar way with mental health. So like if your brain doesn't work how you're told that your brain is supposed to work, you feel broken, you feel like a monster. Okay, so here's where we get to sort of like my unhinged vomit of thoughts, but as spoiler free as possible. I won't tell you how this ends or like who the big bad is or like who's related to whom. Unhinged but spoiler free. Also, I guess I should probably mention that I did read an arc of this, an advanced reader copy, back in 2024 at the end of the year. I got one from the publisher, so I don't know, I guess reviewers are supposed to say that in case there's any changes in the text, but even though I'm reading lines, you know, they might have changed a little bit from how I'm reading them. This book does not come out until the beginning of March, so hopefully this convinces you to read it. So Vivian Farrow, when she was 4 years old, was in a place called Red Rock Canyon, and she fell. And it describes it being sort of like how Alice fell down the rabbit hole. And it says she came face to face with something sinister waiting at the bottom. When it gave her comfort, she'd taken it. When it offered to help, she'd accepted. She hadn't known there'd be a cost. How could she have? She'd been a child, lost and afraid, the night closing in. She would have trusted a wolf had it promised her deliverance. She didn't know she'd carried it home, didn't know it had spent the next several years quietly seeding itself along her veins, putting down roots. Oh, every time I open a Kelly Andrew book, this happens where I'm like, God, this is such good writing. So this thing within her offered her help when she was a child. It essentially rescued her. She didn't understand what was happening at the time. And then after her 12th birthday, the book says it bloomed. And the book says the first time she'd killed someone, she'd still been in braces. Again, we're getting that juxtaposition with like adolescence, the sweetness of adolescence versus like the sinister. It's perfect. Now, the creature within her is horrifying, and I love this, like, obviously this is a book and not a movie, so you're getting these visuals, like, told to you, where it talks to her in mirrors. It typically shows up in the mirror, where it is its own entity, and it's looking at her, and you're seeing, like, I think there's probably art on, I think there's art that I saw on Kelly Andrew's Instagram, where there's one Vivian, and there's the other Vivian, and these two Vivians are very different. And that's what I was talking about before, is these, like, very contrasting things. And so it talks to her, and she's trying to, as the synopsis says, do a surgical exorcism, but the creature cannot know this. You're keeping secrets from me, sang the creature. I don't like that. We shouldn't have secrets, you and I. Now, Vivian is a ballerina. She does ballet, which, you know, it's so condensed Vivian. Bows and ballet shoes and pink. And it says that she had hopes of playing women cursed only to become one herself. Only in her tale of woe there is no breathtaking pas de deux. I don't know French or ballet stuff. I haven't done ballet since I was 7. No roses at her feet, no thunderous applause, only silence unbearable and unending. Oh, this writing is so good. So then we have Tommy, who comes to work for her family as her interpreter because she's a selective mute due to, she speaks and she will kill people. And she immediately resents him, but he's her bodyguard. So we have a bodyguard trope, which is so good. I love a bodyguard trope. Now, Tommy needs this job, as all bodyguards do. Tommy comes from very different circumstances than Vivian comes from. Vivian and her mother married her stepdad, who is very well off. Vivian is, set to inherit from her stepdad. Her stepdad is a douchebag, and her mother keeps her at arm's length and says, you should be grateful for all he does for us. God, this is bringing back my trauma. So Thomas has a younger sister, and he lives with his mom, who is sick. He had a father who unfortunately died. When he was younger, he'd resented his cluttered house with its carpet of cat fur. Oof, same. Artemis, when are you gonna learn to vacuum? And the ceaseless whir of his mother's machinery, the way his father's things were everywhere, even long after they'd bury him. He despised the way death clung to everything. Kelly Andrew really knows how to set a scene every single time. It's so good. So he needs this job because he needed to make enough to start chipping away at his mother's bills, to set aside tuition for his sister, to do all the things his father should have been doing instead of drinking himself into the dirt. So Tommy is very, very accustomed to taking care of other people. Now, Vivian is used to being taken care of, but normally for a sinister purpose. And then in comes Tommy, just wanting to take care of her because he's a good guy. Ooh, they're so cute. I am a sucker for the bodyguard trope. Immediately, this is not what Vivian is wanting to do. She does not want a bodyguard. Her mom can sign a bit, but she's not as fluent in it as Tommy is. And she's basically like, I don't want you here. I want to get you fired, but I'm actually just going to make you quit. I'm going to make this so unenjoyable for you that you leave on your own. And he's like, you don't have to like me, Miss Pharaoh. And I'm like, oh, but she's gonna. And she has this like sort of mean disposition, but it's rooted in like deeply fearing this monster. So she really wants to get this surgical exorcism done. She wants to get this guy that she knows, who's a doctor or training to be a doctor, to surgically remove whatever is in her that is monstrous. Obviously, this is like illegal. And also her mom and stepdad, who know about the monster, would never allow for this. And she's very scared and she's worried that she's getting worse and that slowly that there's going to be nothing left of Vivian, and then there's only going to be the monster. That is her ultimate fear. It says if she told him it was getting worse, that someday she was the girl in the glass, because again, the monster appears to her in reflection, and it was the thing in her skin, like living in her body. What would he say if she told him she found a way to carve it out of her, if he knew that he'd been hired to make sure that she didn't succeed? So Tommy is there and she sees him as a roadblock to getting cured. And Vivian longs for her former life before Philip Pharaoh, her stepdad, came into their lives, when it was just her and her mom, because she thinks that her mom loves her less now, especially now that she has this thing living within her. So she wonders what things would be like if Philip Pharaoh had never come into their lives, if her mother was still Amelia Miller, 7 months pregnant and answering phones at the front desk of a law firm in New York City. Maybe they'd live in a little apartment in Brooklyn. Man, I get this, because my mom got remarried when I was young, and I spent years wondering what my life would be like if she had never met that guy. Now, there are some funny moments in here, and also things that just felt like, again, so personal to me, which is how I feel about Kelly Andrew's other book, Your Blood, My Bones, which is one of my favorite books. I think I may have mentioned it a time or two on this channel. I don't know. At one point it says that her mom, she could have signed the Communist Manifesto for all her mother was doing to botch the translation, which is hilarious. Communist Manifesto shout out. There's also a moment in here where it says the way is shut, and I was like, ah, and it was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it. It's a Lord of the Rings reference. And there's like a lot of really just like funny moments in here, especially when Vivian's like sniping at Thomas, and sometimes he'll dish it back, but most of the time he's just like very sweet and just trying to do his job. And then we have this like very sinister other that lives inside Vivian that we get scenes with that is just like horrifying. But there is something that even that thing fears. Now, Vivian has, I'm not going to tell you more about that. Now, Vivian obviously, like I was saying, has mommy issues, and her mom says these things that cut so deep and often like, I don't know, props up her stepdad as this like savior of them, and again, keeps Vivian very much at arm's length, which is so painful to read, like being a mom now, but then also like having experienced that. So at one point her mom says something to her and it says, the words were a gunshot through and through. An old metallic bitterness seeped out from the wound. She thought of coming home other. of watching her formerly doting mother pull slowly away. Thought of tiptoeing to her bedroom door during sleepless midnights and finding it locked. No chance of being rocked or held. No lullabies, no loving touch. I'm your daughter, she signed, dropping her hand into the crook of her forearm. Her mother stared at the cradle of her arms, some of her anger allaying. Words are hard. In its place crept grief, cold and untouchable. That's right, she said softly. You're a Miller, and Miller girls are survivors. So her mom keeps her at arm's length, but Thomas, the more he grows to know her, including all of her more monstrous parts, does not keep her at arm's length. He cherishes her in a way that she is simply not cherished. She had never been held like this before, like she was a brittle primrose and not deadly nightshade. Ooh, I'm not going to give you any context, but everybody else in her life makes her feel so other. No matter how hard she played at being a girl, at the end of the day, she was nothing more than a doll on a music box, forced to turn and turn by the hand that wound her spring. Now, we have some, I don't really know how to tell you about like the more horrific elements of this, but there are parts when Vivian ends up using her voice on people, and what happens to them is gross. In a great way. I love horror. I love body horror. So if you like body horror, you should read this. Now, in trying to get this other out of her, it tries to convince her that that is impossible. I am knotted all around you. I am tangled so tightly in your bones. I have become all that holds you together. I claimed you for myself all those years ago. You were so small, so afraid he would have broken you, but I made you whole. You keep on forgetting what I did for you, what horrible fate I saved you from enduring. You are mine, sweet girl. You will never, never cut me free. Thomas starts to open up to her about what happened with his father. Thomas is a guy that contains multitudes too. His life was very colored by the fact that his dad consistently wanted to leave, and then he ended up, getting out, but via death. And then Thomas had to take on everything in his dad's stead. And of course, like, Vivian tries to use this against him when he starts to break down her walls and she feels too vulnerable. She tries to throw this in his face, and of course he says, "You're such a fucking princess. You're trying to push me away." And she says, "You need someone to push you. You could be anything. Instead, you're here wasting all of your potential with me because you feel like you owe it to your family." But that is who Thomas has been all of his life, is the person who takes care of other people. So regarding the monster, I just want to read this part. I don't want to give you any context. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I just want to read this part to try to convince you to read this book because it's so good. After all these years, it hadn't been what she'd expected. She'd envisioned something slippery and strange, a parasite with wide alien eyes and a predator's smile. Instead, she'd been faced with an angry little girl with honey-colored eyes. She wondered, not for the first time, if maybe she hadn't done it to herself, if she hadn't calcified the bits of her that were tender to the touch, turned her fury to poison, growing angrier and angrier until it split clean of her. No creature ever started out with venom in their bite. They evolved, they survived, and so had she. She spent so much time trying to hide the parts of her that were rotten. She'd neglected the rest, the girl in her skin, the flesh and blood bits. Again, she had that dizzying sense of being seen, of being loved. It was a little bit funny how she kept discovering her own humanity in the faces of those around her, in the care they took with her. I'm not going to read you anymore, but I want to leave you with a question of what book has a similar theme to this. What if these stories speak to us because something inherent to being human is this grappling with you questioning if you're like the bits of you that are the worst of you calcify into a figurative monster? What if you are other? What if your circumstances and your actions have rotted within you and made you into a monster? What if thinking that is just wholly and inherently human? And what book do you think explores that idea? This book was, again, one of my favorites of 2024. It comes out March 4th, so request it from your library or pre-order if you can. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you made it to the end, you can leave a pink bow emoji down below. And leave your favorite bubblegum horror media if you feel like it, okay? Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye! And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy, Ashley H, Astra, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric D, John E, K, Kaleno K, Casey M, Catherine P, Katie M, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lek, Other Lek, Lily, Mataraptor, Max B, Megwin Rose, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Luhu, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlet, SMK, Steph, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here in the new year and for being a friend. And I have to say a thank you to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are A Third More Powerful Lex, Alejandra, Alicia's Last Frayed Nerve, Alistair, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Beck, Blythe, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Kate B, Caitlin P, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Catherine, Kathy, Celeste, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast in the Silco Apologist era. You know what? Yeah, I get it. I finally watched Arcane, so I get it now. Dorian, Dorothea is not like other girls. Dracoshan, Drive By Thinker, Dirkelsberg, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Fiona, Gadarn, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Harpy Kuro, Helen P, Hrising, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kai Brecker, Caitlin M, Catherine M, Katie L, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTB, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, May, Mima Who, Morgan, Myth, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Paul, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Pandemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca, Rebecca R, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Rowan, Sakuria, Saintbringer, Saki Alume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Stardust, T Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today, Trash Can Teddy, Dribble M, Dido Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, and Writer A. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.